The toys are back in town.
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 The toys are back in
The toys are back.
So we had a special Thursday this week in the world of video games where there was a Nintendo Direct and a State of Play on the same day. There are 29 other days in September they could have picked, but somehow they both just put their thumbs right there on the 14th. What's interesting is that for someone like me who's willing to sit through such things in their entirety, is that you can see too much. You've watched too much, and you start to see the patterns, you start to see the trends, you see what's similar about Sony and Nintendo, and you see what's different about those two. And so that is the theme of today's episode, is how PlayStation and Nintendo explain their fun. This week, I gotta add this week. For this to be a responsible YouTube title, I realized I gotta add this week. Because this State of Play, I don't think was a typical State of Play. I feel like when you think of Sony events, you think of like flashy announcement trailers. And there were zero of those. In fact, there were no new game announcements. They did seem to be more focused on demonstrating games as they are. First off, Spider-Man 2 is looking good. While that last trailer was technically called the gameplay reveal, this was a nice slowed down demonstration of how this game is actually structured. And yeah, I'm not sure if they realize that doubling the size of the map can actually be kind of anxiety-inducing, but this week's trailer did show the most Spider-Man thing I've seen from this game yet. This right here. Now hold on, wait. You might be thinking, like I was thinking, he's going to use that drum as a weapon. But no, it flies right by those guys. I realize Spidey was saving the drum. There's probably some underfunded high school band that needs that drum. Spider-Man realizes that, and he saves the drum. It does seem like the main story of this game is going to be a lot of trudging through thick layers of symbiote drama.
It's got big teeth.
So do I.
Today's demo at least gave me hope that maybe in the side stuff, maybe in the world that you explore, you might find more drums to save. You know, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man stuff. Similarly, I think today's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth trailer is extremely good for kind of the same reasons. When you think of Final Fantasy VII, you think of this. You know, just epic moments. But I love that this week's trailer, while, yeah, it did have its fair share of epic moments, is also so focused on presenting fun moments. Look at this open top big red buggy with little yellow lightning bolts on the side. That's insane. That's an insane thing to put in a video game, but it looks fun to me. We got Aerith feeding Ketchi's big Moogle puppet 3 balls of magic, and then in its tummy, I guess, it changes those balls of magic into a laser beam. We got walking up walls on a chocobo. We got flying on a chocobo. Look at this. Tell me you don't want to do that and be there. I think it's a great trailer because it demonstrates the scale and possibilities and humor of this video game. And they're not afraid to show HUD. This trailer says, come on and play me. Now, Helldivers 2 is a game I'm rooting for. I'm going to play this game when it comes out. I think the game looks fun. However, this week's demo is perplexing. They chose this. They chose this nasty, orange, dusty, smoky planet. And then the players pretty much spend this whole time being annoyed by the enemies that are spawning in. And finally, at the end, one of the players says, should we strategize? And it's like, no, let me just call in this airstrike. Bing bong, we win. I always advocate for just like showing your game as it is. However, I don't think that this presentation was focused on showing what is fun about the game. Lastly, I think Baby Steps had a really nice trailer. You know, these shows always have the tendency to be like, welcome to the world of Baby Steps, where walking isn't as simple as it looks. But this doesn't do that. We get it. Because you're showing somebody playing the game. Because we see that foot hesitating, we get it. We understand. No more needs to be said. Thank you very much. And now moving to Nintendo, similar vibes with how they started their Nintendo Direct with this trailer for the Splatoon 3 expansion. I actually like this a lot. The first weird thing you see is you're doing number damage, which is not a Splatoon thing at all. And then you're in this mysterious elevator. And by the way, none of this is narrated. They got this freaky music. There's a lot of silence, actually. It's really going at its own pace. And we see roguelike upgrades. And then bigger numbers. We get it. We get it. Now, of course, immediately after that ends, everything we surmised is explained in the simplest possible terms.
You will strengthen your character's abilities as you ascend the spire's floors.
But maybe at this point, it's simply on me to accept that that is just Nintendo style. It's been 10 years of that. Of showing you a trailer, then explaining to you the trailer you just watched. Princess Peach Showtime, I think, did a good job of showing what's fun. Here's your new costume. Here's what it does. Here's your new costume. Here's what it does. Here's your new costume. Here's what it does. Here's the thing. The game looks neat. It looks like a neat game to play. But you get the vibes that, like, they asked for more money than their bosses gave them. Hey, here's another resource-strapped announcement.
The toys are back in town.
Mario vs. Donkey Kong, which is a remake of the first not particularly beloved Game Boy Advance game. Here's how they explain the fun for this.
Observation and action are vital to your success. Mario needs to reach the key, but he can't quite cross the gap. That monkey's tail looks a little suspicious, though. If Mario does this, now he can get across.
I realize that tone is condescending. It's basically the voice you would use to explain what a video game is to a dog. But I actually think that was a nice demonstration, right? They're saying, look, we realize this looks weird. We realize this looks less fun than a regular Mario game. Here's what this game's deal is. It's its own thing. And don't worry, we're not crazy. It's not a full-priced game. It will only be $50 US, please. Super Mario RPG's demonstration was weird because it focused only on what is new about this version of the game. What this has that the Super Nintendo version did not. And that turned out to be just 3 bullet points. So 1, if you time your button presses correctly, you can spread damage to all the enemies. 2, this one's actually cool. These special animated combo attacks. I like those. But then the final selling point is this.
During your adventure, you'll encounter bosses with colorful personalities. After clearing the game, you can fight some of them again.
No incentive given, just post-game boss rematches. And I think, hold on, what is fun about that? Why is that a bullet point? Do I get a new costume? No, it's just doing that boss fight again. I remember a late game boss that was secret and super hard. That was fun. Look, I don't want to be too cynical. Look, I don't mean to be ignorant, but it appears as though this is simply a very economical method to produce what could only generously be called content. And it's crazy to me that they expect anyone to be excited about that. So when you look at that trailer for Spider-Man 2, and you look at that trailer for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it's obvious to anyone just how far behind Nintendo has become. At the same time, they did just announce a remake of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. And if my math is right, this is enough points to win the week. Congratulations to Nintendo, the kings of fun. And queens. And that is delayed input for this week. Thanks for watching. So because there was too much stuff to condense into a nice sweet little video, it is now time for loose observations that didn't make it in. One nice thing about the Nintendo Direct format is that if you're curious about a release date, they'll give you time to write it down.
Find out when Detective Pikachu returns. Launches on Nintendo Switch October 6th. Pre-orders are available now on Nintendo eShop.
But then, like, for Sony, if you can't speed read, They don't give a shit.
You and I are each other's destiny.
So one thing I've made fun of a couple of times on this show is that like when they're introducing RPG characters and they each have like their own tagline that describes who they are, normally it's incredibly uninteresting. I have to give some credit to Saga Emerald Beyond for this.
A young man who fights with sentient puppets.
Oh?
A witch disguised as a schoolgirl to mask her identity.
Okay.
A songstress mech who lost her voice and body.
And that's perfect. There's a robot with a singer trapped inside of it. And here's, I don't know, I don't want to make fun of this, but the Tomb Raider 1 through 3 collection starring Lara Croft, it's just the strangest visual upgrade. I guess the most barely visual upgrade you could ever describe. And it's like the obviously because they didn't want to change the geometry, they didn't want to make it too good. So they made like box art Lara Croft. And then for the world, it's not even like, you wouldn't even say like PS2, like that's lower quality than PS2, but still extremely appropriate. I don't even know what to call this look. It's basically like how you would describe Tomb Raider to a friend. Another weird thing is that this was the first state of play hosted by a human. Like PlayStation Presents, that's where Jim Ryan comes out and reads off the teleprompter. But this was the first state of play that wasn't narrated by that one narrator.
That was a sneak peek at some great upcoming games for PlayStation VR 2.
And this is kind of weird, but it's not weird. If you go to the timestamps of the video, the second to last thing is called Nintendo Switch Games Sizzle Reel. And that's not particularly weird for something like this to end with a sizzle reel, right? But it is so weird for a Nintendo Direct. They don't do that. To show a little montage of games that you've seen throughout this entire presentation smushed together in first party only, to my knowledge, a Nintendo Direct has never ended that way. They'll do sizzle reels where they'll show like third party games that they don't want to talk about. And also check these out. But a weird like summary sizzle reel at the end of your own thing, I think basically it's presented like, hey, look, we're still supporting the Switch. This montage proves it, okay? There should be no doubt. Sizzle away, everyone. What a weird thing. But not weird. I couldn't put it in the script of the episode because people will be like, Kyle, what are you talking about? It's not weird, but let me tell you right now here after the credits, it's weird.